Deep within the sterile, unsettling confines of precinct kennels, a chilling legend circulated, whispered among the most hardened officers. His name was Kaiser, a German shepherd of imposing stature. But it wasn't his size that struck fear into hearts. It was the raw, untamed fury that simmered beneath his thick black fur. He was a police dog, or at least, he was supposed to be. Instead, Kaiser was an enigma, a living paradox of loyalty turned terrifying aggression. Whenever a shadow fell across his cage, a low, guttural growl would rumble from his chest, escalating into a terrifying snarl. His powerful jaws would snap at the air, teeth bared, eyes alight with an almost manic intensity. The steel bars of his kennel bore the scars of countless furious lunges, each dent a testament to his unyielding, mysterious rage. No treat, no coaxing word, no gentle hand had ever been able to penetrate the fortress of his ferocity. He attacked everyone who dared to get close, his reputation preceding him like a dark cloud hovering over the small, otherwise tranquil town in the heart of the United States. Officer David Miller knew the whispers, the fear Kaiser inspired. A veteran K-9 handler, David had seen his share of challenging dogs, each with their quirks and temperaments. For 15 years, he had dedicated his life to these noble creatures, transforming energetic pups into indispensable partners, guardians of public safety. His previous K-9, a gentle giant named Duke, had retired last year after a distinguished career, leaving a void that Kaiser was meant to fill. David was known for his calm demeanor, his innate ability to connect with animals, often succeeding where others failed. He had a natural empathy, a quiet patience that usually won over even the most stubborn canines. But Kaiser was different. Kaiser was a wall of impenetrable hostility, a shadow David simply couldn't illuminate. The story of Kaiser's arrival was already steeped in departmental legend. He had been acquired from a specialized breeding program, lauded for his lineage and intelligence. Initial assessments were promising, highlighting his keen senses and powerful build. Yet, from the moment he stepped paw into the training yard, something was profoundly wrong. His aggression wasn't sporadic. It was constant, indiscriminate. He attacked trainers, other dogs, even inanimate objects that seemed to invade his perceived space. Every attempt at traditional K-9 training had ended in failure, often with injuries to the handlers. Muzzle training was impossible. He would fight it with a visceral desperation. Leash work was a nightmare, his powerful body lunging and twisting with explosive force, threatening to dislocate shoulders. Behavioral specialists, renowned for rehabilitating aggressive breeds, had been called in, their expertise baffled by Kaiser's unyielding hostility. They suggested everything from neurological imbalances to severe, unidentifiable trauma. Nothing worked. The department, a tight-knit unit in a town that prided itself on its low crime rate, was growing increasingly frustrated. Kaiser was not only a monumental drain on resources, but also a significant liability. His presence caused unease, a constant threat simmering just beyond the kennel door. Officers avoided his section of the facility, the air thick with unspoken tension whenever his name was mentioned. The consensus was hardening. Kaiser was untrainable, dangerous, and beyond redemption. There was talk, quiet but persistent, of the only remaining option: euthanasia. The thought left a bitter taste in David's mouth, a gnawing sense of failure. He believed every animal deserved a chance, but with Kaiser, hope was a rapidly dwindling commodity. This dog, who had attacked everyone who got close, seemed destined for a tragic end. But what if there was another way? What if a seemingly impossible connection could turn the tide? To discover the surprising turn of events, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell, because what happens next will astound you. The tension surrounding Kaiser was a thick, suffocating cloud that hung over the entire precinct. Every bark, every snarl echoing from his reinforced kennel served as a grim reminder of the formidable challenge he presented. His aggression wasn't just a behavioral issue. It was a physical threat that had already claimed several casualties. Officer Miller, a man of quiet determination, bore the weight of these incidents heavily. He remembered the swift, savage bite that had sent Officer Ramirez to the emergency room with deep lacerations, and the frantic scramble when another handler barely escaped Kaiser's lunge, tearing a rotator cuff in the process. These weren't minor nips. They were calculated, brutal attacks designed to inflict maximum harm. The consensus within the department solidified with each passing week. Kaiser was a lost cause. The phrase, uttered in hushed tones in the break room and in sterner voices during command meetings, felt like a death sentence. There was a practicality to it, a cold, hard logic. A police dog that couldn't be safely handled, much less deployed, was not only useless, but a liability. Funding, resources, and valuable training time were poured into K9 units, and Kaiser was simply an unsustainable drain. Officer Miller understood the rationale intellectually, but his heart, deeply invested in every animal under his care, refused to accept it. He had tried everything. His own expertise, honed over a decade of successful K9 partnerships, proved utterly ineffective. He'd spent countless hours in front of Kaiser's cage, speaking in calm, reassuring tones, offering high-value treats, but the dog remained an unyielding fortress of rage. Then came the parade of specialists. First, a renowned animal behaviorist, whose gentle approach and carefully crafted desensitization techniques worked wonders with other troubled dogs, left after 2 days, visibly shaken and admitting defeat. Kaiser had nearly breached the reinforced glass partition, his eyes burning with an undiminished fury. Following that, a K9 unit expert from a larger metropolitan force, touted for his success with even the most aggressive canines, fared no better. He concluded that Kaiser exhibited no discernible triggers, no patterns of fear or defensiveness, only pure, untempered hostility. Even pharmacological interventions were attempted. The department's vet had prescribed mild sedatives, hoping a reduced anxiety level might allow for some breakthrough. The result was merely a slightly slower, still dangerously aggressive animal. Kaiser would become drowsy, perhaps even nod off for a few minutes, but the moment anyone approached, his eyes would snap open, and the snarling would resume with undiminished intensity. It was as if his aggression was an innate, primal force that no sedative could truly quell. Officer Miller felt a growing despair, a gnawing sense of failure that ate at him day and night. He saw Kaiser not as a monster, but as a deeply wounded soul, trapped in a cycle of fear and violence. He believed there was a core of something salvageable beneath the snarling facade, but he couldn't reach it. The memory of Kaiser as a vibrant, intelligent puppy, full of potential, haunted him. He recalled the early days of training, when Kaiser showed incredible promise, exceptional scent detection skills, and a keen intelligence. What had gone so horribly wrong? The question plagued him, an unanswered riddle that stood between Kaiser and his very existence. Each failed attempt chipped away at Miller's resolve, but also deepened his personal investment. He wasn't just doing his job, he was fighting for a life. He saw the flicker of sentience behind those enraged eyes, a lost spirit crying out from its self-imposed prison. Yet, the walls of that prison seemed insurmountable, built not just of bars and concrete, but of deep-seated trauma and an almost pathological distrust of humanity. The department's patience was wearing thin, and Miller knew with a heavy heart that time was rapidly running out for Kaiser. The discussions were no longer about training methods, but about the most humane way to end his suffering, and in doing so, ensuring the safety of everyone else. The department's patience had finally worn thin. After countless incidents, mounting vet bills, and the pervasive fear Kaiser instilled in everyone, the captain called a definitive meeting. The verdict was swift and brutally clear. If Officer Miller couldn't somehow tame Kaiser within 2 weeks, the dog would be euthanized. The word echoed in David's mind, a cruel sentence for an animal he believed was simply misunderstood, albeit dangerously so. He felt an unbearable weight settle on his shoulders, a crushing guilt that he, a seasoned K9 handler, had failed so spectacularly. He'd dedicated untold hours, tried every technique known, exhausted every resource, but Kaiser remained an impenetrable fortress of aggression. The deadline loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to extinguish the last flicker of hope for the majestic yet terrifying German Shepherd. David spent his nights staring at the ceiling, replaying every failed attempt, every snarl, every lunge. He simply couldn't reconcile the image of a powerful police dog, a creature inherently designed for duty, being put down for a ferocity he couldn't seem to channel or comprehend. Amidst this deepening despair, a tiny, unexpected spark of hope began to glow, though David was initially oblivious to its significance. His daughter, Sarah, a vibrant 7-year-old with an almost ethereal connection to all living things, had been particularly inquisitive about his work lately. Sarah possessed a gentle spirit and an innocent fearlessness that many adults had long since lost. Animals, particularly those that others deemed difficult or dangerous, seemed drawn to her, sensing a purity of intention. She would often bring home stray kittens, nurse injured birds back to health, and spend hours talking to the neighborhood dogs as if they were her closest confidants. David, consumed by Kaiser's impending fate, hadn't yet considered how profoundly this innocent empathy might intersect with his professional crisis. One blisteringly hot afternoon, Sarah accompanied her father to the police station. School was out, and David, needing to complete some urgent paperwork before the looming deadline regarding Kaiser, had brought her along, promising an ice cream cone afterward. The station, a melange of bustling activity and hushed urgency, was usually off-limits to children, but Sarah was a familiar, if infrequent, visitor. David settled her in his office with a coloring book and a stack of animal-themed stickers, giving her firm instructions to stay put. He then plunged into the labyrinth of reports, his mind still fixated on Kaiser's impossible problem. Sarah, however, possessed an adventurous spirit that often superseded her father's directives. The drone of the air conditioning, the distant clatter of keyboards, and her father's absorbed silence quickly lost their charm. Her eyes, wide with curiosity, scanned the unfamiliar hallway outside David's office. A faint, low growl, barely audible above the station's hum, pricked her ears. It wasn't menacing, not overtly hostile, but it carried an undertone of deep, unsettling sadness that resonated with her empathetic nature. Drawn by an unseen force, a childlike curiosity overriding any sense of caution, Sarah quietly slipped out of the office. Her small feet padded softly on the polished linoleum following the mournful sound. She turned a corner and found herself in a quieter, less frequented section of the station, where a large, reinforced kennel stood. Inside, a magnificent German Shepherd, its fur dark as midnight, paced restlessly. It was Kaiser, the embodiment of her father's current torment, but to Sarah, he was simply a big, sad dog. The growl intensified slightly as she approached, a warning signal to any adult, but to Sarah, it sounded more like a plea. Unaware of the profound danger Kaiser posed, and captivated by the sorrow she perceived in his eyes, she slowly, deliberately, walked towards the bars of his cage. The air in the usually bustling station seemed to still as Sarah, with her innocent courage, settled herself gracefully on the cold concrete floor, directly in front of Kaiser's imposing kennel. Her small legs were crossed neatly, her bright eyes fixed on the powerful dog within. Any adult observer would have recoiled in terror, anticipating the inevitable lunge, the fearsome snarl that had become Kaiser's hallmark. Officers passing by froze, their conversations dying on their lips, their faces etched with a mixture of horror and disbelief. They watched, paralyzed, expecting the worst, braced for the violent eruption that always followed any close encounter with the notorious K9. The very thought of Kaiser attacking a child sent a shiver down their spines, a chilling premonition of the tragedy about to unfold. Yet, the expected eruption never came. Kaiser, who had been pacing with a restless energy just moments before, stopped dead in his tracks. His head, previously held low in a perpetual state of readiness to attack, slowly lifted. His powerful body, usually coiled with tension, seemed to lose some of its rigidness. He stared at the small figure, utterly motionless, as if trying to comprehend this novel, unprecedented situation. The deep, guttural growl that had been a constant companion to his cage quieted to an almost imperceptible rumble, a mere vibration in his chest. His ears, typically pricked aggressively, softened slightly, tilting in an almost quizzical manner. It was an uncharacteristic reaction, a momentary suspension of his ingrained ferocity that astounded everyone who witnessed it. Sarah, completely oblivious to the palpable tension radiating from the onlookers, remained calm. She offered a soft, almost imperceptible smile, her young face radiating an unshakable sense of peace. She didn't speak, didn't make any sudden movements. She simply existed in that space, a tiny beacon of tranquility in front of a creature known only for chaos. Kaiser's intense gaze remained fixed on her, his dark eyes, usually clouded with suspicion and anger, now held a strange mix of confusion and something akin to hesitant curiosity. A low whine, soft and barely audible, escaped his muzzle. It wasn't the threatening snarl everyone knew. It was a sound filled with an unexpected vulnerability, a sound that conveyed a deep, unspoken longing, rather than aggression. Slowly, with an agonizing deliberateness, Kaiser took a tentative step towards the front of his cage. His massive paws, capable of delivering crushing blows, moved with a surprising delicacy. He continued to whine, a soft, almost mournful sound, as he edged closer to the bars, his nose twitching slightly. His powerful muscles, usually tense and ready for confrontation, seemed to relax, his body language shifting from aggressive posturing to something approaching curiosity. The hardened officers watching held their breath, their hearts pounding in their chests, unable to believe what they were seeing. This was not the Kaiser they knew, the uncontrollable beast that had terrorized the department. Sarah, with an intuition that defied her tender years, understood. She saw not a monster, but a sad, lonely animal. Without a trace of fear, her small hand, still clutching a half-colored crayon, slowly extended through the space between the bars. Her fingers were delicate, unthreatening, an offering of peace. Kaiser's large head lowered cautiously, his nose sniffing the air around her outstretched hand. The air crackled with a silent expectancy. Then, with a gentleness that seemed utterly impossible for him, the powerful dog tentatively licked her fingers. It was a soft, warm touch, a tentative connection that shattered every preconceived notion about Kaiser. A collective gasp rippled through the stunned officers. In that single, breathtaking moment, a barrier that had seemed impenetrable, built of fear and trauma, finally began to crumble. A tiny ray of hope, utterly unexpected and profoundly moving, pierced the darkness surrounding Kaiser. Over the next few days, a quiet ritual began to unfold, largely unnoticed by the busy officers of the precinct. Sarah, with her heart full of innocent determination and a pocket often filled with carefully hoarded dog biscuits from her father's pantry, would discreetly slip away to visit Kaiser. Each visit was a delicate dance of budding trust. She didn't press herself against the bars or try to force physical contact. Instead, she would sit a comfortable distance away, her small legs crossed, and simply talk to him. Her voice, soft and melodic, spun tales of her day at school, the squirrels in her backyard, or the strange shapes she saw in the clouds. Kaiser, initially wary, would watch her with an intensity that slowly shifted from suspicion to curiosity. His deep growls, once a constant, menacing presence, receded, replaced by soft whines and an occasional tentative wag of his tail. Sarah would gently slide a biscuit through the bars, never pushing her hand too far, allowing Kaiser to approach on his terms. He would sniff it cautiously, then take it with a surprising tenderness for such a powerful jaw. These secret sessions, filled with quiet murmurs and the rustle of treats, began to chip away at the formidable wall of aggression Kaiser had built around himself. The tension in his muscular frame seemed to lessen, his pacing grew less frantic, and the wild, untamed fire in his eyes softened to a flickering ember of cautious peace. He still barked at other officers, still lunged when anyone unfamiliar came too close. But for Sarah, there was an almost palpable sense of anticipation whenever her small frame appeared in the hallway. He'd lie down, head resting on his paws, watching her with an almost reverent attention, seemingly understanding the unspoken language of her gentle presence. Officer Miller, burdened by the imminent deadline and the grim reality of Kaiser's fate, began to notice subtle changes. At first, it was just a feeling, a slight easing of the constant anxiety that had permeated the animal's kennel. Then, he started catching glimpses of Kaiser lying calmly, not pacing, not snarling. He'd hear a low, contented rumble from the kennel, a sound he hadn't associated with the dog since his arrival. Miller, a man of logic and trained observation, initially dismissed it as a trick of the light, a momentary lapse in Kaiser's perpetual fury. He even wondered if the stress was finally getting to him, making him hallucinate signs of improvement where there were none. But the evidence became harder to ignore. One morning, he saw Kaiser actually look at him without an immediate, teeth-bared snarl. The dog's eyes, usually pools of pure aggression, held a flicker of something different, a distant echo of the intelligent, watchful gaze a canine was supposed to possess. Miller began to observe more closely, pretending to sort paperwork nearby, listening intently whenever he heard Sarah's cheerful chatter from the direction of Kaiser's kennel. His heart, heavy with despair just days before, now beat with a fragile, almost fearful hope. Could it be possible? Could his daughter, with her innocent, fearless heart, be reaching the unreachable? He watched, his skepticism slowly giving way to a cautious, incredulous optimism as he witnessed the undeniable bond forming between his daughter and the previously untamable dog. He saw Kaiser respond to Sarah's voice, not with aggression, but with an almost puppy-like deference, nudging her hand through the bars with his wet nose. However, the other officers remained deeply skeptical. To them, Kaiser was a dangerous liability, a constant threat to their safety and the department's reputation. They'd heard Miller's hopeful murmurs about Sarah's influence, but dismissed it as a father's wishful thinking. "Kids don't train police dogs, Miller," Sergeant Davies had grunted, his voice gruff. "One fluke interaction doesn't change what that animal is. He's a ticking time bomb, and we can't afford to wait for him to explode. The department's safety concerns override any sentimental attachments." The consensus remained firm. Kaiser's euthanasia was the only sensible solution. The deadline loomed large, a dark cloud threatening to extinguish the fragile spark of hope Sarah had ignited. Miller knew he had to do something, and soon, before it was too late. He had to convince them, somehow, that Kaiser was no longer the dog they all feared. The remarkable transformation was undeniable, a stark contrast to the snarling beast that had haunted their department for so long. Yet, skepticism, a deeply ingrained trait in the minds of those who had witnessed Kaiser's terrifying past, lingered like a stubborn shadow. Officer Miller, witnessing his daughter's profound impact and sensing a rare opportunity, knew a casual observation wouldn't suffice. He needed to make a public statement, a definitive display of Kaiser's newfound disposition to secure the dog's future. The idea of a public demonstration was revolutionary, almost audacious, and it met immediate, formidable opposition from his superiors. "David, are you insane?" Chief Thompson had boomed, his face turning a shade of crimson usually reserved for budget meetings. "You want to parade that animal in front of civilians? He's a liability, a ticking time bomb. We've already had 3 officers injured. What if he snaps? What if he hurts someone, especially a child?" Miller stood firm, his voice steady despite the tremor of anxiety in his chest. "Chief, he's different now. Sarah, she's reached him in a way no one else could. He responds to her. He trusts her. This isn't the same dog." Captain Ramirez, usually the picture of stoicism, interjected, "With all due respect, Officer Miller, a child's presence doesn't rewrite years of violent behavioral patterns. It's too great a risk. The public relations fallout alone would be catastrophic." But Miller was relentless. He presented a meticulously planned proposal, detailing safety measures, a controlled environment, and his absolute conviction. He reminded them of Kaiser's potential, his inherent intelligence, and the tragedy of simply giving up on a life that could be salvaged. He appealed to their sense of duty, not just to the department, but to the idea of redemption. After days of heated debate, fueled by Miller's unwavering resolve and the quiet, almost desperate hope he inspired in a few junior officers, the chief reluctantly conceded. The demonstration would be authorized, but under the strictest conditions, with contingency plans for every imaginable failure. The pressure on Miller was immense. Kaiser's fate, and perhaps his own career, rested on this one precarious event. The day arrived, thick with a palpable tension that hung heavy in the air like an impending storm. A designated, highly secured training yard, typically used for K-9 drills, was cordoned off. A small group of senior officers, the chief and Captain Ramirez, stood watching, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and grim expectation. Uniformed officers, strategically positioned, stood ready to intervene at a moment's notice. The air practically crackled with unspoken doubt. Sarah, dressed in her favorite pink unicorn t-shirt, remained remarkably calm. She gripped her father's hand tightly, a small, reassuring squeeze that spoke volumes. When it was time, David led Kaiser, now wearing a simple flat collar instead of the heavy choke chain, into the center of the yard. The dog, his head held high, looked around, his intelligent eyes scanning the faces, but without the usual aggressive posturing. Then David released his leash. A collective gasp swept through the onlookers. Releasing a dog like Kaiser, unmuzzled and unrestrained, was unthinkable just weeks prior. Sarah, with a soft, encouraging smile, stepped forward. "Hi, Kaiser," she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet it resonated like a bell in the silent yard. The dog's ears perked. He watched her, his body language relaxed, almost eager. Instead of lunging, instead of the guttural snarls that had once defined him, Kaiser slowly, tentatively, trotted towards the small girl. He didn't erupt. He didn't attack. He stopped a few feet from her, then gently, almost shyly, nudged her hand with his nose. Sarah giggled, reaching out to stroke his powerful head. "Sit, Kaiser," she commanded softly, her tiny finger pointing to the ground. Without hesitation, the formidable police dog lowered himself, sitting obediently at her feet, his tail giving a tentative wag. Sarah then proceeded to put him through a series of simple commands. Stay, down, come. All executed with surprising precision and an almost joyful eagerness that had never been seen before. He even performed a small, clumsy paw trick, laying his head on her lap. The officers watched, stunned into silence. Their hardened cynicism began to melt away, replaced by open-mouthed awe. This wasn't a fluke. This was genuine connection, a bond forged in innocence and trust. The department was utterly staggered, their preconceived notions shattered by the undeniable evidence before their eyes. Kaiser, the untamable terror, had been validated, not by force, but by the quiet power of a little girl's heart. The quiet awe that had settled over the training yard was shattered abruptly, not by Kaiser, but by the shrill, insistent ring of the chief's personal radio. All eyes turned to him as he listened, his face slowly draining of color. "What do you mean, a missing child? And no K9 units available?" His voice, usually booming, was tight with disbelief. A sudden critical situation had arisen in a remote, heavily wooded area on the outskirts of town. A 5-year-old boy, Leo, had wandered away from a family picnic and was now lost amidst dense undergrowth and rapidly falling temperatures. Every available K9 team was already deployed on a high-profile narcotics bust miles away, an operation that couldn't be abandoned. A grim silence descended as the implications sank in. Precious minutes were ticking away, and without a trained search dog, the chances of finding Leo quickly diminished. Captain Ramirez, always pragmatic, looked at Officer Miller, then at Kaiser, who sat patiently beside Sarah, nudging her hand for another affectionate pat. The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. Could they truly trust him? Was this newfound gentleness a facade that would crumble under real-world pressure? The chief, usually steadfast in his adherence to protocol, was visibly torn. "Miller," he began, his voice strained, "your dog, can he actually track, under these conditions?" David met his gaze, a fierce determination replacing the earlier relief. "Chief, with Sarah, Kaiser has shown he can do anything. He's sharper than any dog I've ever seen. Please give him a chance. Leo doesn't have time for hesitation." Sarah, sensing the urgency, gently stroked Kaiser's head. "He's a good boy, Daddy. He'll find the little boy." Her unwavering faith seemed to echo in the tense atmosphere. With no other viable options, and the clock ticking mercilessly, the chief made the gut-wrenching decision. "All right, Miller. Take Kaiser, but be extremely cautious. This is on your head." It was less an order and more a desperate plea for a miracle. Officer Miller, Kaiser, and a small search party were immediately dispatched to the last known location of the missing child. The area was a labyrinth of tangled bushes, fallen logs, and muddy ravines, the fading daylight making visibility a challenge. The ground, churned by countless footsteps, offered little in the way of clear scent trails. Other officers fanned out, calling Leo's name, but their shouts seemed to vanish into the oppressive quiet of the woods. David, heart pounding, clipped Kaiser's leash to his harness, a tactical search harness now instead of the simple collar, feeling a surge of responsibility. "Find him, boy," he whispered, pointing in the direction the child was last seen. Kaiser, sensing the shift from playful demonstration to serious work, transformed. His ears swiveled, his powerful nose to the ground. He began to move with a focused intensity Miller had rarely witnessed, even in his most experienced K9 partners. The dog moved purposefully, weaving through the undergrowth, occasionally pausing to reevaluate a scent, then continuing with renewed vigor. Miller followed closely, his trust in Kaiser absolute, despite the lingering doubt echoing in his mind. They navigated treacherous terrain, Kaiser's keen senses cutting through the cacophony of natural smells and human activity. After what felt like an eternity, but was perhaps only 40 minutes, Kaiser let out a sharp, short bark, tugging frantically on his leash. He led Miller to a small, hidden hollow beneath a massive oak tree. There, huddled, shivering, but thankfully awake, was little Leo. The boy's eyes widened with a mix of fear and relief at the sight of the large dog and the approaching officer. Kaiser, instead of barking aggressively or trying to jump, simply sat down, giving a soft whine, his head tilted as if offering comfort. Miller quickly scooped up the child, checking him for injuries as another officer arrived, radioing the good news. Leo was safe, all thanks to the very dog they had almost given up on. The story of Kaiser's heroism quickly spread, not just within the department, but across local news channels and eventually national headlines. The untrainable dog, saved from euthanasia by the innocence of a little girl, had become a real-life hero. Photos of Kaiser, gentle and calm beside Leo, or looking affectionately at Sarah, graced newspaper front pages. The public, initially skeptical or fearful, now showered him with praise and affection. He had transitioned from a feared, dangerous animal to a beloved symbol of redemption, proof that even the most troubled souls could find their purpose and prove their worth. The department, once ready to discard him, now saw him as their most valuable asset, forever indebted to the bond he shared with a courageous little girl. The extraordinary display at the training yard had peeled back layers of cynicism and doubt, revealing a truth more profound than any tactical manual could ever explain. Kaiser, once a pariah, was now a living testament to the transformative power of empathy. The department, irrevocably swayed by the undeniable evidence of Sarah's bond with the dog, reversed its grim decision. Kaiser was not only spared, but officially reinstated as a police K9, a development that had seemed utterly impossible mere weeks before. He was no longer just the aggressive dog. He was still Kaiser, but with a new chapter beginning, one written in partnership with Officer Miller. The duo, once a source of constant frustration for David, now formed an inseparable team, their movements synchronized, their understanding unspoken. Sarah, the quiet catalyst for this remarkable turnaround, continued to be a constant, beloved presence in Kaiser's life. Her visits to the station became a cherished ritual, a soothing balm for the formidable dog even amidst the rigorous demands of police work. She would bring him small, approved treats, sharing hushed conversations and endless gentle pats. Their unique bond, forged in innocence and sustained by genuine affection, was a constant reminder to everyone in the precinct that true power lay not in dominance, but in connection. It was a partnership based on trust, not fear, and it redefined what success looked like in K9 policing. Inspired by Kaiser's incredible transformation and Sarah's pivotal role in it, the department embarked on a complete re-evaluation of its K9 training protocols. Old methods focused solely on strict obedience and control began to give way to more progressive approaches that emphasized understanding the animal's psychology, building trust, and fostering a genuine rapport between dog and handler. There was an increased focus on positive reinforcement, early socialization, and tailored training programs that honored each dog's individual temperament. The story of Kaiser became a mandatory case study, a living example of how patience, understanding, and a willingness to see beyond initial appearances could unlock an animal's true potential. They learned that sometimes the most effective training tool wasn't a choke chain, but a gentle hand and an open heart. The profound impact of Sarah's innocence and unwavering empathy resonated far beyond the walls of the police department, touching every life connected to this incredible journey. It highlighted a universal truth, that love and understanding possess an unparalleled ability to heal even the deepest wounds, to mend what seems irreparably broken. Kaiser's story became a beacon of hope, a powerful narrative underscoring the idea that every living being, no matter how troubled its past, no matter how formidable its defenses, deserves a chance at redemption. His transformation was a testament to the fact that sometimes the quietest acts of kindness can create the loudest ripples of change, proving that a single pure-hearted gesture can rewrite a destiny. From the snarling, fear-ridden creature confined to a kennel, Kaiser had become a decorated hero, a symbol of hope, and a beloved companion. His journey, guided by the small, gentle hand of a child, demonstrated that beneath layers of trauma and aggression, there often lies an untapped capacity for loyalty, courage, and unconditional love. It's a powerful lesson, not just for K9 handlers, but for all of us. To look deeper, to offer grace, and to never underestimate the healing power of a truly empathetic connection. Thank you for joining us on Kaiser's extraordinary journey. We hope his story has touched your heart as much as it has ours. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you find most inspiring about Kaiser's transformation? And don't forget to watch our next video for another uplifting tale that reminds us of the incredible connections that exist all around us.